Hi, I'm Hannah.
When three strangers walked into the Yellowjackets camp in the midst of their Thanksgiving celebration, they didn't know the rules of the potluck were bring something to eat or be eaten. Hannah, Edwin, and Kodiak were just passing through on the lookout for frogs when they crossed paths with fate and their lives were changed forever, or ended on the spot. Strength in numbers turned out to be a farce because, in the end, they were far safer with the frogs. Let's take a deeper look at the frog scientists and their guide who, according to legend, wandered into the wilderness and never came out again. It was 3 days prior to Canadian Thanksgiving, and for the first time ever, the sultry sounds of love were being captured on tape. But these weren't the sweet sounds of whispered words. Oh no. It was the screeching screams of the Arctic banshee frog who had awoken from their 7-year slumber to have a summer-long orgy. It's like they say, I guess the heart wants what it wants. Hannah and Edwin collect a specimen to take back with them, trapping one of the little rain frogs in a jar. This seems like foreshadowing for the herpetologist's fate, being trapped in an unnatural environment you cannot escape, but we'll get into more of that later. It was 2 days prior to Canadian Thanksgiving, and things were getting hot in the kitchen. Thankfully, they had a personal chef as well as a guide, because a rabbit stew by the name of Peter was on the menu. Very on brand for the wilderness. Edwin prefers the bland, manufactured flavor of protein bars while he nurses a sore toe, but Kodiak tells him he will eventually run out of those things. Toes? Or, well, at least the wilderness provides. Edwin is not concerned, explaining that the previous group had left supplies out there somewhere, so it should be easy to track those down, right? It's only been 7 years, Edwin. I thought you were a scientist. Though, definitely not a meteorologist, because Kodiak tells him there's a rain coming on, and he better knob his whirly bits before they get drenched. It was 1 day prior to Canadian Thanksgiving, and being trapped in a tent has never felt so tense. Kodiak eases the mood with his gift of a green thumb, and Edwin, finally let his frog secretions hang loose. Hannah tries to ask Kodiak if he had grown up nearby and how he linked up with the university, but he is tight-lipped about his past, only revealing that he had wandered into the woods one day following a buck and never came out again. He does claim to be a frog expert, sharing the tales of the frogs who wished for a king, one of Aesop's fables. The frogs were tired of governing themselves. They had so much freedom that it had spoiled them, and they did nothing but sit around croaking in a bored manner and wishing for a government that would entertain them with the pomp and display of royalty, and rule them in a way to make them know that they were being ruled. No milk and water government for them, they declared. So they sent a petition to Jupiter asking for a king. Jupiter saw what simple and foolish creatures they were, but to keep them quiet and make them think they had a king, he threw down a huge log, which fell into the water with a great splash. The frogs hid themselves amongst the reeds and grasses, thinking the new king to be some fearful giant, but they soon discovered how tame and peaceable King Log was. In a short time, the younger frogs were using him for a diving platform, while the older frogs made him a meeting place where they complained loudly to Jupiter about the government. To teach the frogs a lesson, the ruler of the gods now sent a crane to be king of Frogland. The crane proved to be a very different sort of king from old King Log. He gobbled up the poor frogs right and left, and they soon saw what fools they had been. In mournful croaks, they begged Jupiter to take away the cruel tyrant before they should all be destroyed. "How now?" cried Jupiter. "Are you not yet content? You have what you asked for, and so you only have yourselves to blame for your misfortunes." Hannah wants to know who the future Mrs. Kodiak will be, and the only oracle she knows of is Miss Cleo, so upon Edwin's suggestion, they decide to use the sat phone to call her. But they don't have a direct line to the sky, and they're not high enough. According to who? I didn't know frog scientists could handle their shit. Cody and Hannah start wrestling around, and they break the antenna on the sat phone, destroying their lifeline, according to Edwin. But Cody tells them to relax, that he is their lifeline. It was the day of Thanksgiving, and Edwin was in a very poor mood. He had become paranoid and believed that Kodiak was trying to sabotage them so he could rob and murder them out there. He even believed he was leading them off course, although his compass was of no help as they crossed the dividing line into the wilderness's territory, marked by one of the symbol trees. Hannah had become smitten with Cody and trusted his guidance out in the wild, but that night as they set up camp, Edwin found a jacket in Cody's stuff with the name Eric Chong on the label. He then smelled something on the air, like barbecue, and realized there were people nearby. Kodiak warned him it was not a good idea to go walking into other people's camps way out there so far from civilization, but Edwin took off following his nose like a bloodhound, with Hannah tailing behind him. Kodiak was annoyed as he picked up his crossbow and followed his charges. As the frog scientists descended upon the frenzied group of girls, every instinct in both Hannah and Cody were screaming to get out of there. Edwin, on the other hand, was innocent and not built for a place he couldn't have his protein bars.
Lottie, what did you do?
Lottie was not ready for their reality to be shattered by these strangers, so she shattered Edwin's skull with a hatchet instead. This created a panic which sent Hannah and Cody running into the darkness. Cody turned around and shot an arrow from his crossbow, which hit Melissa in the right shoulder. Hannah suggested they return to their camp for supplies, but Cody said they must rely upon instinct now, and to follow him, which she does not. Hannah runs across a field to hide in a grove of trees, while Kodiak runs toward Shit Cliff with Travis, Akila, and Misty following him. Ty and Van follow Hannah with their torches, while Shauna and Nat put theirs out to catch anyone who might be flushed out. The scene of Hannah hiding by the log was very interesting for many reasons. She separates from Cody and runs across a field, hiding amongst some trees behind a fallen log. As she ran, her ponytail was caught on a branch which ripped out a hank of her hair. This whole scene was reminiscent of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, when the hobbits are hiding from the Nazgul behind a log. In that scene, Frodo must resist the urge to put the One Ring on his finger, and in this scene, Hannah makes a decision that has a major ripple effect into the future. She records a message for her daughter on her DAT recorder used for the frogs and hides the recorder in the log, buried beneath some rocks. Ty and Van sniff around the log before running off, then Shauna and Nat come out of the darkness to see if Hannah had been flushed out. Shauna finds Hannah's hair on the branch, which she grabs and sticks in her pocket, just like she had done with Jackie's ear. We should also recall that the Antler Queen wears locks of hair on their white robe, so this may be the origins of that tradition. Hannah sees them tracking her footprints through a hole in the log and surrenders herself. Now, a couple of things stood out here, and they may just be red herrings, or it may be for the astute citizen detective. But if we recall back in episode 5, Shauna and Walter had teamed up to follow Missy as she investigated Lottie's death, and in a fail attempt at mutually assured destruction, Walter stole a hair from Shauna's hat in case he needed DNA evidence. And after the remark about really intense birders from Van, combined with Walter's general weirdness, many were speculating that Walter might be the child of the frog scientists before they were confirmed to specialize in herpetology. However, Walter taking Shauna's hair is a parallel to Shauna taking Hannah's hair, and like I said, this whole scene was very Lord of the Rings, which is arguably Elijah Wood's most well-known role, playing Frodo Baggins. So this whole scene is a major hint that Walter is somehow connected to the frog scientists. From the information we have, he's not their son. They never mention having a son, but perhaps he's a brother or related in another way. There's just some connection there that my nerdy brain cannot ignore. Shauna and Callie would also share DNA because of their maternal relationship. So teen Shauna pocketing Hannah's hair might be a clue pointing us to a younger version of herself being incriminated here. Hannah also seems to be a foil of Shauna, which is hitting her hard in the adult timeline once she listens to the tape. Hannah was a teen mom, and we don't know if she had given Alex up for adoption or raised her quietly. She had also gone to a good college and sought the interesting career she desired, all of the things that had slipped from Shauna's grasp when the plane crashed into the wilderness. Shauna believes that Alex is trying to kill her by messing with her brakes and locking her in the freezer, but I actually think Shauna is being paranoid, and Alex actually has no idea about any of this, and she might even be being used by someone else, whoever Hilary Swank's character is planned to be, to lure Shauna in. Shauna believes she is the hunter, but Alex is just the bait to draw Shauna in. Now, Kodiak is a very interesting character for many reasons, and we should recall that Aquila had a vision in the cave in episode 5 of their camp, with the girls glitching in and out of the frame, but the camp remained the same. And she also saw a strange claymation bear lumbering into the camp who grew larger and larger until a third eye appeared in his forehead. She couldn't make out the meaning of this dream at the time, but I think we may have more answers after this episode. Now, Kodiak is also the name of the world's largest bears, even larger than grizzly bears, so his name being Kodiak instantly connects him to bears. But not only that, if we recall back in season 1, after the Doomcoming festivities, a bear lumbers into the camp outside the cabin while the girls are all waking up out of their mushroom hangover. Lottie approaches the bear and stabs it in the neck or shoulder region, and the bear lies down dead. The group is able to eat the bear through the winter.
Oh my fucking God. She just fucking stabbed a bear.
Not that I was paying attention or anything, but maybe you noticed that Kodiak, the mountain man, also has a lot of scars, including around his neck and shoulder. Hannah definitely noticed it as well. He says he got the scars from a Sasquatch, and there are many things out there that can kill a man right before shooting a rabbit with his crossbow. Like I said, very on brand for the wilderness. Kodiak seems to be a part of the wilderness, in the same way the girls are now. In fact, he almost seems like the embodiment of the wilderness. And when Lottie first saw him in the distance at the end of episode 6, she thought he was Ben, in a sort of maniac, frenzied vision induced by mushrooms and spiritual meat. Cody had also told Hannah that he had followed a buck into the woods and never came out again, much like Lottie had done in her own visions. She saw a buck in the woods with bloody antlers, which is a naturally occurring event, but she also saw the same buck in her vision in the tunnels, which turned out to be a vision of her own death. As Kodiak tells this story, the shadows of tree branches show through the tent, creating the image of antlers growing from his head. So, is it possible that Kodiak is some sort of reincarnated being or shapeshifter linked to the wilderness? He never gave Hannah a straight answer about where he had grown up or how he became connected to the university. He knows the forest well and knows the etiquette of the wilderness. And though he almost falls off the cliff, he's accepting of his fate in that moment and even tells Travis to save his bullet. Now, we've talked about this cliff before. This was the cliff Aquila saw in her vision of Coach Ben stretched across the chasm, the bridge home. This is also the cliff where Crystal fell to her death and her body was never found. So there's something mysterious about this cliff that connects it to some greater fate that Cody might be aware of. Kodiak tells Hannah and Edwin the story of the frogs who wished for a king, which perfectly describes the dynamic between Natalie and Shauna and their roles as leaders of the group. But the kings of frogs were also dictated by a higher power, Zeus. So it implies that there's something greater guiding the leader of the Yellowjackets, whether that be Zeus or the wilderness or something else entirely. Kodiak seems conscious and respectful of the give and take required to survive in the wilderness, and it seems to approve of his presence. But someone like Edwin, who rejects the wild and its gifts, such as the rabbit in favor of a power bar, we can see that he really isn't made to hack it out there, and Lottie got that memo loud and clear. There have been others who rejected the ways of the wilderness, and they didn't last long out there. Laura Lee, Jackie, Javi, and Coach Ben. So Cody understands that you must adapt to survive out there. Reincarnation is an omnipresent theme throughout the series, so I think that Kodiak may be an example of this, or some sort of wilderness authority figure sent to balance the scales of the girls' wilderness justice system that we have discussed many times throughout this season. Edwin does not accept the wilderness. He relies upon technology, and he feels extremely uncomfortable when their phone breaks. He quickly becomes paranoid about Kodiak and his adaptability out in the wild, and he assumes the worst about him because of it. Hannah is far more at ease, willing to see where things take them. She has recorded the frogs in their mating ritual, which was their reason for coming out there. And maybe she's also looking for a mating ritual, unbeknownst to Edwin. Hannah is far more trusting of Kodiak despite his secretive nature. Kodiak, on the other hand, is completely comfortable and trusts his own instincts to keep him alive out there. He knows how to hunt, track, and mind his own business, which seems important when you stumble across a coven of cannibalistic girls barbecuing their soccer coach. However, Edwin tries to prove himself useful by seeking strength in numbers, which was a fatal mistake on his part. I mean, who really walks into a scene like that? A group of women in furs dancing and screeching around a fire? Has he never seen a horror movie in his life? Edwin says the last team left supplies out there. If the frogs only wake up every 7 years, it means the last team out there would have been at least 7 years ago. And it also means the team had not been out there the prior summer when the plane had crashed. The initials KUH were on the sat phone, and according to Ty and Van, KUH was on the boxes that Coach Ben had dragged out, which also means that the girls got their hands on the emergency supplies that Ben had found in the pit. KUH stands for Keene University Herpetology, which is the department named in Hannah's obituary, and is a real college in New Jersey which operates as a state-designated research university. In Hannah's obituary, we also learn that her name is Hannah Sophia Finch, and each of those names have a ton of symbolic meaning. Hannah is a nod to the dual realities in Yellowjackets, Hannah being a palindrome, or the two halves of her name mirror each other. Sophia is divine wisdom in the form of a woman, and Finch is a bird, but also associated with Christ's passion, making the finch, especially the goldfinch, a symbol of resurrection, passion, and suffering. The goldfinch is linked to Christ's passion due to a legend that a goldfinch plucked a thorn from Jesus' crown, causing its feathers to be stained red with his blood. Gold is also symbolically important to the Yellowjackets, especially through Jackie's golden heart necklace, and if the theories about Hannah being pit girl are correct, it really ties all these details up with a nice bow. Finally, it should be pointed out that as Edwin, Hannah, and Cody approach the girls, the music that plays in the background is the same music that plays at Lottie's Wellness Center while they perform the ritual with white robes and animal masks where they mock bury a guy, and Nat threatens to cave Lottie's head in with a stick. It's very primal, drum-heavy, ritualistic music, and it's very distinct. I've always believed that Lottie was reenacting wilderness rituals at her wellness center, but this kind of takes the cake. Seeing the origins of the ritual, combined with Edwin's shocking death and what Lottie does in the aftermath, is really intense. We can see why Nat had such a visceral reaction when she saw what was going on there. Lottie has been struggling all throughout season 3 to hear the wilderness, and only by Edwin's death and her psychotic break while playing with his brains and blood was she able to reestablish a connection to that higher power. But the rest of the group seemed pretty disappointed in Lottie's snap decision to do this because they all still wanted to go home, while Lottie and Shauna really want to stay in this sordid fairy tale because of their own personal traumas. Hannah and Kodiak are both guided back to the camp, and in the trailer for episode 8, it looks as though the girls will be interrogating them and finally learning some of the details of what has been going on in the outside world since they disappeared. It should be very interesting going forward to see how the girls will react to the presence of two adults, one of whom is far more capable and adaptable to survival out there. Will they accept them as authority figures, or will it choose the wilderness justice system that the girls have worked out amongst themselves?
Those strangers, they were gonna ruin everything. Go fuck your blood dirt, Lottie.
But those are just my thoughts, so let me know yours in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Check out the Monday Morning Murder Podcast live each Monday here on the channel, discussing the newest episodes of Yellowjackets and much more. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next.
Oh, little buddy. Oh, we're a bit dorky and a bit big in our bodies.
Lopsy.
We're like a bit silly. And